Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great night, and just want to say thank you for joining us tonight for our Cub Scout recruitment discussion. I'm Pat Dannenberg, your Director of Field Service, and with me tonight is Levi Knight, and then out there also with us tonight helping present is Blake. And the three of us are going to really talk to you about recruiting tonight, go through a little slideshow presentation. And hopefully what we can do is we'll go through the whole presentation. If you got questions and it's just burning and you really feel like it can't wait, then go ahead and ask it while we're talking. But overall, if you could save most of your questions until the end and just write it down and note it, and then we'll get to the end of the presentation, and we've got plenty of time to ask away and have discussions that night or for tonight. And so excited to talk to you about Cub Scout recruiting. And I know the reality is we can talk about Cub Scout recruiting. I know from the perspective of many, it can look like, hey, we're talking about a numbers game. I know that, somebody could say, all right, you want us to recruit 25 kids. Well, somewhere in there, I was one of those 25 kids years ago. And the kid that I saw at a court of honor this last week that stood up in front of the entire troop and was the SPL and basically said, hey, I am sorry. I did another activity for the last 2-3 months that kept me from coming to troop meetings. And yet just before that, I pleaded with you to be SPL, and I'm sorry that I haven't been around. A scout that stands up and can say something like that, that to me is symbolism that the scouting program is working. It's symbolism that it affected that one kid. And for every one kid that we have that does that, we don't always get to hear the good stories from all the other kids. But something else that I always like to bring up and just share with people is we're not just about kids. Each one of us as adults, we interact with scouting too, and it helps make us better too. And so for every kid that we get, we hopefully get a parent to go with that kid. Sometimes we don't, but the parents get just as much out of scouting as the kids do. So, but without much ado, I really want to slide through these slides with you tonight. And we're just going to go through them and talk. And once again, save your questions for the end if you can. If it's burning and you have to ask it, though, feel free to ask away. So, Levi.
All right. So when we talk about our yearly plan, we're going to first focus on Cub Scouts. This is a 3-phase plan for this year. Phase 1 should be happening right now, and that's with spring recruiting. The real focus of the spring recruiting should be on incoming kindergartners that are essentially aging into the Cub Scout program, but there can also be a focus on general recruiting at the schools, and a traditional model of recruiting during that spring phase. In the fall is when we'll do our real focused recruiting that we'll do. We go into the schools with flyers and with Cub Talks and with sign-up nights and hitting all the back to schools and yard signs and everything we're going to talk about in this presentation. So that's the phase 2. And then the phase 3 is essentially second chance recruitments, as they've been referred to in the past, where if we're some areas where we're lacking or some areas where we missed out, we'll go back in sort of in the later fall, sort of October, November timeframe, and have second chance recruitments. Scouts BSA, this is a 2-phase process. That first phase is the winter spring. Obviously, there's some crossover of Arab Lights. There should also be a focus on right now of 5th graders that can be signed up directly into Scouts BSA troops. I'm not sure a lot of units are focusing on that type of thing. Those kids are of age and they can join directly into a troop without having to be in Cub Scouts, and they're at an age where they're going to be a little bit easier to recruit before they get into middle school age. So that's the phase one of Scouts BSA. And then fall, we'll go in and do a more structured recruiting again with all the same steps we do in Cub Scout recruiting, depending on level of access and where our targets are.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Pat said, my name is Blake, and I get to speak today a little bit about new member coordinators. Every unit should have a new member coordinator, or even more than one if you feel the need to have it. The role, real briefly, the role of a new member coordinator is essentially to be the friend to the new folks who are being and they be the super bubbly, the super enthusiastic, the super welcoming person to these new people as they're coming in and being acquainted with scouting. And dependent on the needs of your unit, the new member coordinator could simply be in charge of orienting new parents to life as a scout parent by providing insights and tools and maybe showing them the apps that they need to download and inviting them to be part of the Facebook page, etc. They could also help the membership chair organize and plan your recruitment events. But in the end, what it really boils down to is that last line there on the slide. Let's greet to be great.
So I want to share with you guys the 12-point plan. It's a simple concept, and really every scout unit has the opportunity to participate in this. And your scout unit has the ability to recruit all year long. And with the 12-point plan, it's the simple part of it is all you have to do is take this list of several different ideas, pick 12 on there, and take those 12 and just implement them throughout your year. Now, some of them are really simple, and some of them are the things that you do every day when you go to do a fall recruitment. But some of them also are going to stretch you a little bit. But the idea is to sit down, name out 12, identify somebody that can help you do those. And in the process of it, really think about it. You probably did 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 different methods on a normal year in the past on how you recruited. But let's say you take it and expand it up to the 12, then really what you're doing is expanding and doing more recruiting opportunities, more marketing opportunities. And in doing so, the goal is, and the effort is going to be applied to where you have a chance of recruiting more kids in. Now, odd says by the time you get towards 12, you're probably doing more in the community. And if you're doing more in the community, you're probably going to be carrying the message beyond your scout unit. And so if every scout unit in the area is doing this effort, a similar effort, then really you could be recruiting for the next pack next door. You could be recruiting for the troop that you feed into by just sharing the message of scouting in the community. So you can go and find more on the 12-point plan by going to montanabsa.org/12-point plan. There's a video with instructions and more concept ideas on the 12-point plan. On that same page, you can submit your info, and to submit it, you can print out a PDF and scan it and email it off, take a picture of it, email it off to membership@montanabsa.org, or you can just submit it on that website. There's a form there and it collects the info and you get an automatic receipt of the info with all the data that you submit. So
we'll talk more specifically now into the phases that I touched on briefly earlier. In Cub Scouts phase 1, this is our spring recruitment again. This is going to be essentially your unit's recruitment method and your plan. So whatever you want to do, if that's an activity day in a park, if it's setting up a table outside of the school after school, if it's a bring a buddy event at a normal pack meeting, whatever you want to do to recruit, that's fine by us. And we'll support that with collateral, flyers and yard signs and stickers and trying to get into the schools. But we're going to rely on your unit to do whatever method and plan that you want to recruit during phase 1. Phase 2, we're going to have some goals here, and that's to ensure that we maximize our local recognition to join. We're going to essentially get the word out as far and wide as we can about Scouts and make sure everyone hears about us. We're going to bring those joining opportunities as local as possible. We're going to follow our plan. So I think this is important. Pat and myself and the rest of our field staff across the state, we're hopefully the subject matter experts when it comes to recruiting. And we have a consistent plan and resources to bring to bear to be successful with recruiting this fall. And so during phase 2 of this fall recruiting, we're going to follow our plan. And eventually our goal would be to have one school and one pack. And this ties into those first 2 goals in maximizing local recognition and bringing joining opportunities as local as possible. So we want to make sure that we're strengthening relationships with the schools that our packs serve in the communities and the visibility that we have through those relationships. And then phase 3, like I said earlier, is the second chance recruitment. It's just a repeat of phase 2, using all those same resources again to offer another opportunity to kids or communities or families we may have missed.
All right, so there's really 2 different ways that we can do recruiting. For the most part, there's the talk method and then there's the table method. Table method is more a newer style philosophy that scouting has. It's kind of similar. You hear about a soccer sign up, or you go sign your kid up for lacrosse or something like that. Look, on those situations, you walk up to a table, you sign your kid up, and you walk away. You heard about all the info you need to join Scout. And so it's the table method. There's different ways of laying out those tables, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But the talk method is really, you stand up in front of everybody that shows up for recruitment. You give them a speech and a spiel for how and why they joined scouting. And then in theory, you're walking away with a bunch of new scouts.
So to dive into the table method just a little bit more, as you can see from the slide, this method is really about using different tables to help guide parents through a controlled introduction to scouting. Dependent on the size of your unit, you can shape this to the way that works best for you, shrinking it down to 3 tables or expanding it to 5. The important part here is that you have volunteers at each table that know their roles and have what they need to be able to succeed. Now, one of the fun things that we can do to liven this up a little bit, because no kid is going to show up to a scouting join night and be excited about hearing about the Facebook page. They're just not. And so one thing that can make this more engaging for the kids as they're going through is to have a passport. We skipped ahead too far or too fast, but essentially what the passport is just a little slip of paper where the kids will get a stamp, and it could be a Star Wars stamp or really, that's all I can think of. I love Star Wars. But that's beside the point. You can do any type of stamp you want. And the kids get so excited about earning those stamps as they go from table to table to table. So the passport's a really good way to shake it up for the kids. Okay, now let's go on to the next slide. So the tables are as follows. First is the greeter table, and this is where everybody signs in. That's probably the most important part of this table on the back end of things, is that everybody signs in, because after your recruitment, you'll be able to take that sign-in sheet and compare the list of newly registered kids to who actually signed in. And that will give you a couple of leads to follow up on and see if, hey, maybe there's a kid that didn't quite get signed up at the join night, but still wants to join scouting. So we need to be on top of that. Second is the Bobcat table. And this is where you'd put your Cub Master to coach the kids through going through the requirements of earning the Bobcat badge. And just think of how cool it would be to have a Cub meeting just a couple of weeks after the recruitment event, where every single one of those new kids earns the Bobcat badge. Also at this table, it's a place where you can give general information about the pack to the parents, and we'll discuss what goes into that information a little bit later. Table 3 is a den leader table where your new youth are going to meet your den leaders. This is one that could be combined if need be, if your manpower is limited. And again, a place that you can provide information to parents at. Table 4 is probably the most overlooked table. And it's silly to say we have a recruitment event and we forget the application table. But it's from what I've seen, it's the most neglected, and I don't know why. But this is where parents will sign their kids up. They come to a sign-up night to get signed up. There's no reason to be shy or to stay away from having that there for them. Paper applications are okay. Digital applications are fantastic. You can set up computers or you can have a QR code that'll take them on their phones right to the sign-in spot for your pack. It's a really good way to go, and it makes things a whole lot easier on your end because you don't have to handle 25 applications and keep track of checks and all that. Finally, the most fun table, the one the kids are looking forward to, the activity. Something simple, in my opinion, is best. Montana Council is actually in the process of ordering some kits that we can use for our activity, little wooden pocket knives with the Montana Council logo across them that the kids can put together. Not necessarily that you'd have to use that activity, but just as something as a resource for everybody to use. My recommendation is to stick your committee chair at this location. And here's why. It's a great space to scope out new potential volunteers. Parents who are helping their children or even helping other children with the activity are a great place to start for finding new leaders within the pack. All right, I've talked enough, so Levi, back to you.
Thanks, Blake. So moving on from the table method, we'll talk about the talk. This is a method that I'm pretty fond of, that I've done extensively over the course of my career. The talk is really in places where we are maybe starting a new unit. We don't have the manpower to bring to bear to have a bunch of tables going, or if there's a unit that's struggling, and again, we don't have the manpower. So during the talk, everyone hears one speech. It's where a guy like me or Pat or Blake or someone like Renee or Jim or Dan stands up in front of the room and talks to the whole group. You sort of try to arrange tables by grade. So all the dens sit together and have an opportunity to know each other and form relationships. You have some opportunity to form dens. You have some opportunity to recruit leaders, but it's all under a lot of pressure. I can tell you from experience, if you have an off night, you're not going to have a good sign-up night. If you say the wrong thing trying to recruit leaders, you're not going to recruit a lot of leaders. And so it's just a very high pressure way of doing it. Sometimes it's a necessity, again, where we don't have the manpower, we're going in and forming units. But the table method is really, I think, the way to go to share the load and make the recruitments a lot easier, and I think more fun for those who are coming to them and for our units.
So there's a plan for you to help get your recruitment going. And so the easiest thing to do is to basically pick your night that you're going to hold the recruitment. And once you've got that date figured out, then you kind of get to backdate everything from there. Now, it's odd because you look at the way this slide looks. You say, all right, here's the date I want. Well, in order to pick that date, you have to kind of also work with your schools. You have to know some of the info that they have and the things that are going on at the school in order to pick that night. So really and truly, though, once you pick your joint night, your recruitment night, you're going to be able to select when you do Cub Talks. I always recommend either doing the day of or the day before. There's lots of debate. Which day do you go with? But kids can remember that day, and they can remember the day before to go home and say, hey, it's today or tomorrow. But before that, though, you really have to get your yard signs out. You have to strategically place them. The week before you do your recruitment, you need to have your flyers going home through schools if you can send those home. The week before, 2 weeks before, you want to make sure you have social media going in your area. And then prior to that, meet the teacher, back to school night, school carnivals, fall carnivals. anything that's going on inside the school, if you have an opportunity to be inside that school interacting with more kids and parents also to help promote your recruitment, the better off you'll be. And the way you find that out is by going and visiting your school and coordinating with the school, knowing when they are doing things and asking to have a presence and asking about different methods that you can market inside the school for your PAC. If you miss out on any of these opportunities, these are some of the most critical here on this page, but if you miss out, then you have to really work harder to supplement with other methods and build those up even more so that you can still be effective at recruiting.
We want you to own your territory. What this means is we have some units across the state that are serving maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe more schools. And ultimately, if that's the case, they're probably underserving all but 1 or maybe 2 or 3 of those schools. And so ultimately, we want your unit to identify the schools as sort of a best fit and where you want to focus your efforts for recruiting. And then recognize that people everywhere want scouting. And we're going to go in and identify where there are holes, where there are needs in our communities, where there are communities where we don't have scouting currently, and we're going to form units. And that might be seen as, stepping on your territory. And that's why we're asking you right now to identify sort of where you'd like to recruit from. And then we'll go in from there and fill in the blanks with putting units and picking up the schools that are getting left out. But ultimately, if we go back to what our goals are, we want to make sure that we're keeping these join nights as local as possible, and then we're making sure that everyone has the opportunity to join. And the way we do that is by diversifying as much as possible when and where we're having these sign-up nights.
Part of owning your territory is being organized at your sign-up nights. There are several things that you could bring to give to new parents at a recruitment event, but I would advise to keep it simple and save the more detailed information for a later parent meeting. At the recruitment event, there's really only a few things that parents are interested in really knowing, and subsequently give the image of you having your things together, which is a really good selling point for parents. But those things are, as you can see, a PAC calendar that has all of the goings on of your PAC for at least 6 months, ideally longer, and a PAC info sheet that has the wheres and the whens and the whos and the contact information and the system of communication within the PAC. This is the information that parents want more than anything else. And the third item on there, very soon, every unit in Montana Council will have their very own landing page that is linked to montanabsa.org. These pages are going to be customizable to fit your needs, and it's really just going to be a great place to send new parents to see a little bit more about your unit. The URLs are going to be generated based off of your unit number. So, for example, if you're in PAC 4207, it'd be Montana BSA /PAC 4207. If you'd like to alter that URL, say if PAC 4207 wants to go by just PAC 207, you can send an email to membership@montanabsa.org, and we'll make that change for you. But it's a really cool and more of a unique way to get information to parents.
We will have a lot of materials at your disposal as we work through recruiting this year. And this is just a small sample of what we'll have. Obviously, yard signs, flyers, posters. We will have parent orientation guides. We'll have wristbands. We'll have the passports for the table method signups. We'll have folders or envelopes. We'll go back to those for sign nights. We're also talking about doing maybe drawstring backpacks as well, that as little swag you can give away at sign up nights. We'll have the DIN formation sheets and roster sheets and sign in sheets. We'll have applications, though we would like to lean in more to the digital applications. We still will have physical applications, and we'll also have some pre-printed stickers and the ability to make custom stickers as well.
Now, recruitment events oftentimes are a lot of work. And so in order to get the most out of all of that time and effort that goes into it, we advise these 4 musts to have the most successful recruitment event. I don't know how many hours you guys have spent, but I can tell you I've spent a lot of man hours preparing for a join activity only to have 1 or 2 kids show up. And that's just the most heart-wrenching thing. So these 4 things have been studied and proven to have the greatest impact on having youth show up to your recruitment event. 2 rounds of flyers in the school, plus if you can manage it, getting a digital one sent home to the parents via the school's communication system, social media ads that can be generated and sent out by Lido, our council's marketing specialist, yard signs placed strategically before your event, and lastly, having talks in the schools the day of or the day before your join night.
So all these things, the Scout office can really help print these materials for you. We're not looking for every Scout unit to go off and print these themselves. The Scout offices, all of our district executives have the ability to print materials for every recruitment. And really and truly, we've got the custom flyer. It's colored, it's pretty, and so forth. The yard signs, we can put print out pieces of paper on them. We'll talk about yard signs. Wristbands, it's a Tyvek wristband that's easy, but we can also do stickers and so forth. But the main point is hey, like the Scout office is here to help print these. And when you start having to print 1,000 flyers, that's a lot of flyers to print at somebody's home. So don't go to that effort. Take advantage of the Scout offices and have them print out the materials for you.
Specifically regarding social media ads, these are more and more popular and more effective as we learn about social media. But here are the steps to make a social media ad happen. Like the printing, social media ads are part of the service that Montana Council provides, so it's not an expense to you and your unit. But step 1 is to submit a request at least 2 weeks prior. And you send that to Lido. Again, he's our marketing specialist, and you can see on the screen, there is his contact information. You can copy your DE in on that just so that your DE is aware of the goings on of your unit. And if you forget Lido's information, your DE can definitely help you with that. And I guess with that email, you need to include just a couple basic things: the location of that joint event, the date and time of that joint event, and anything special that is happening at that joint event that you'd like to highlight. For example, if you're having a bike rodeo or a mock Pinewood Derby, something that would draw a little bit more attention to your ad, you can include that, and that'll be put in the ad for you.
So let's talk about the yard signs. And so the Scout office can print the bottom part of a yard sign. And really and truly, what I mean by that is if you look at these different samples of yard signs, really and truly, if you think about a yard sign, most of our yard signs are getting placed with the intent of somebody driving by them to see them. Now, if you're only going to have foot traffic going by the yard sign, then you can handwrite on them. You can attach all sorts of stuff to them. But really and truly, if you've got a situation where somebody's driving by it, then you want to make sure the lettering is as clear as day. Phone numbers on yard signs, if somebody's driving by, they're not going to be able to remember a phone number. They're just going to be able to remember Brown Elementary, 6:30 tomorrow, that kind of thing. But for the most part, I really advise, if you're using a yard sign and somebody's walking by, that's fine. Put more details on it. But for the most part, keep it as simple as can be. Date, time, and location, and that's it. Now, if you're going and there is foot traffic, then go to Walmart. They sell these plastic folders with a flap on them, and you can go and take that same folder, you can tape it to a yard sign, you can staple it to a yard sign, and that flyer that you put in the schools, you can take that same flyer and put it right there in a envelope folder type thing that's attached to your yard sign, and just put on the outside and say, take one. And somebody can walk by and grab an extra flyer from you. But really and truly, your goal is to make your yard sign be in certain locations. And when I say that, this is a picture of part of Butte. And when you look at Butte and you sit down and say, all right, where's my elementary schools? And it's kind of hard to see on this picture where the elementary schools are. But if you think about your area that you live in, and it's maybe you have square grid or something like that on your streets, but think about where traffic flows. If traffic is flowing and stopping somewhere, that's a good location many times to put out a yard sign in that location. A bad location a lot of times that I tell people is right in front of the school. Look, if you put a yard sign out right in front of the school and you expect people to see it, people drive by that school, they stop in front of the school. And once that first car stops to pick up their kids in front of the school, you've got a blocked yard sign and half the people don't ever see it. So think about all the places throughout town. Think about where people are grocery shopping. Think about the tire shop. Think about the gas station. Think about all these different places where people have to go by for your elementary school. If they live in your boundaries, where are they going shopping? Where are they stopping? Is there a subdivision? And is there a mean in and out of that subdivision? That four-way stop, cover it. And when I say cover this area, don't just put 1 yard sign out. Think about putting 30 out. Think about putting 40 out. Put 50 out. We've got yard signs and they're available, but just make sure you put plenty of them out, because just one doesn't necessarily quite do. It doesn't make it effective for you. And where it becomes effective as a tool for recruiting and reminding people to come to your recruitment is when you're starting to do 20, 30, 40 yard signs. So be considerate of where you put them, granted, but at the same time frame, also know that where you put them is critical to be seen.
Well, let's talk about Cub Talks. As we mentioned, we do prefer to do Cub Talks either the day of or the day before the join night. And there are several different ways to conduct a Cub Talk. The essentially tier 1 S tier way is classroom to classroom. Anymore, it's very difficult to do classroom to classroom. It takes a lot of time to do classroom to classroom. It could take a whole day depending on how big the school is. It's a big disruption for the schools. So it's very hard to convince them to let us have that level of access. But there are some pros of classroom to classroom. You have essentially individual access to the kids. You can give them another flyer. You can give them a sticker. You can give them a wristband. You can sort of tailor your message for every different class that you go into. So certainly still one of the best methods to do a Cub Talk. School assembly is a good method too, less disruptive as far as the time it takes, more disruptive because you get a lot of kids together in one room and you get them very excited about scouting. Very loud, very loud. Not a lot of individualized access to different grade levels or different kids, so it's hard to pass things out or tailor your message sort of with just one general message about scouting, but it's a low access and it's a worthwhile method if that's the only way you can do it. Lunchroom, I've grown more to preferring lunchroom talks. You go in for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on school, maybe 2 hours. But during lunch, as the kids get their lunch and come sit down, you can either go table to table and do a quick talk, or you can stand in front of the room, have the room quiet down, and talk to all the kids all at once. You can still tailor your message because generally there's going to be different age groups in there. You can still even pass out wristbands or stickers or flyers. It's an enclosed, and they're generally pretty good. And so this last fall here in Billings, I did almost exclusively lunchroom talks. I think I did one classroom to classroom cup talks. So playground, I'd rather, if someone says to do playground, I'd rather not even do a cup talk. You can still do some stuff, but it's really hard to get kids' attention when you're trying to sit up on a playground and they have other things on their mind, like playing. And that's going to be a lot more fun than coming over and talking to the person who's there in a uniform and talking about Cub Scouts. But it's a little access. There can be some success there. And so somewhere we have no access, and the way to get the foot in the door is do a playground talk. Certainly we'll take it, and we'll give you some tools to be successful with that.
Like candy.
Like candy, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sort of touched on this already, but talking to a large group, the message is going to be different because different groups can do different activities, obviously, in Cub Scouts. When you're going classroom to classroom or even a lunchroom talk, you can have a little bit more personalized message. I tend to talk about sort of big ticket items. I talk about Pinewood derbies. I talk about rocket launching. I talk about shooting BB guns and bows and arrows and fishing and hiking and camping, and that kids get excited about that. So there's a little bit of how you deliver the message and what you talk about depending on what sort of talk you're doing. And then how you deliver the message is very important. I always repeat at least 3 times when and where the event is happening, right? Either tonight or tomorrow night, at what time, 6:30, 7 o'clock, where it is. It's very easy when it's at a school or at their school to tell them it's right here at the school. It's in the cafeteria, it's in the library, it's in the multi-purpose room. The kids know, they're so familiar with that stuff. And they just have to tell their whoever takes care of them to come back to the school. It's a non-threatening, it's a neutral environment. And it's a welcoming place for them. It's very difficult to try to tell someone, well, especially if they're kindergartners, that a sign-up night is at a location that is unknown to them, like a church or a different community meeting area. So anywhere it's possible, either at the school or somewhere that's school adjacent, like a park or an open meeting space by the school. Because it's very easy to direct the kids there, and then repeat the message. And then I always had them repeat it back to me. When, tomorrow night, where at the school, what time, 6 o'clock, and what are we doing? We're joining Cub Scouts, and who was going to join? And every kid goes crazy, right? So that's important.
And now I get to talk about the number 7. That's my favorite number.
7.
7. But in this case, this 7 stands for the 7 times that it takes for a parent to hear about scouting before they decide to check it out. I think most of us are pretty familiar with that statistic. 7 times they have to hear about scouting before they go, well, maybe I'll look into it, see what that scouting business is about. The more that we can put scouting in front of parents, the more impact we will have on the youth of our collective communities. I think really that's the crux of our message tonight, is the more things we're doing, the more impact we're having.
So we had a sign-up night. We had 30 kids come. They signed up. What do we do after that? We sit on those applications until recharter, and then we turn them. No, we don't do that. We turn all the applications in as soon as possible with the money. Ideally, again, people are signing up that night and paying online. That is by far going to be the easiest method. It's going to avoid lost paperwork. It's going to avoid issues with payment. It's going to avoid all the issues that we deal with in the geography of our council and applications that we've had in the past, right? We're also going to want to make sure that everyone has the information necessary as they leave. So we'll provide with you sort of a quick reference guide where they'll be able to put the pack meets at this time, the den meets at this time, the cub master is this person, the den leader is this person, as well as Montana Council general information like our store locations, how much uniforms generally cost, and books and all those kinds of things. And so we'll give you all sorts of resources to be successful, because the most amount of attrition that we have in scouting is right after that sign up night. People that come to that one meeting, they sign up, and then we never see them again. So we want to make sure that not only they come and they sign up, but that we latch onto them, keep them in the loop, and we make sure that they have a positive scouting experience moving forward.
So I think one of the things that can really help every scout unit is, look, I know and realize that the paper application is right there. It's in front of you. Sometimes it's faster and easier. And if it is, then great, go with it. But the truth is too, that it's what's about to be feasible for everybody is to say, say you're Pac-12 and you want to recruit, you're at a recruitment night for Pac-12. Well, go to montanabsa.org/Pac-12, and it would take you straight into the beascout.org application process for your specific unit. And that's kind of what Blake was talking about earlier. The great thing about it is when somebody does an application online, there's nothing missed. The application process online forces you to go through and answer all the questions. Not only does it force you to answer the questions, but it forces the person to legibly be able to answer the question. So you don't have to worry about, all right, what does this email really say? Is this letter an A or is it an O? And so you're able to legibly get everything into the computer because the individual puts it in. And then they pay online also. And so at a recruitment night, there's no handling of money. And it really simplifies that process a lot faster. And when you're doing that table method, if you have the application table going, you can have paper applications there. You can have a QR code that you can get from my.scouting from your PAX page on there. You can also get the QR code from your district executive, and you can print that picture and put the QR code up. You can put on every printed material you've got. To join and fill out the application for our PAC, go to montanabsa.org/Pac-12. And really and truly, it's just that easy. The issue that everybody has is if you go to beascout.org, the link to that page is super long. And that's why as a council, we're creating these short URLs that are easier to redirect straight to the page for you, because really and truly, it rolls right off your tongue and helps it make it easy for every unit.
So the last thing that we'll discuss today about retention of youth is including those new families early and communicating early. A welcome email, a welcome text, or a phone call, something should be sent no later than 24 hours after a joint event. The largest drop-off rate in scouting happens within the first week of joining, unfortunately. And one of the things that we can do to prevent that is over-communicating during that period and being that absolute excitement and positive influence for those new families. Parents sign up their kids because they want them to be involved in something good. So whatever we can do to be a part of that goodness and help them be involved early on and communicate on multiple platforms is essential.
Thanks, Blake and Levi, for helping tonight. To me, it's important that our scout units start to learn some of the ways and things that they can do to help recruit. And part of that process includes your district executive. And really, we talk about some of the philosophical approaches to start doing these things, but the nitty and gritty on how to actually do some of that, reach out to your district executive, have the discussion with them, and start the dialogue on planning. And your district executives have checklists, they have orientation guides. They have all these different materials to help with the process and planning, but really and truly something that's, I feel, true and dear, that's important for every scout unit is to somewhere over summertime, sit down, plan out your yearly calendar, and in that yearly calendar, include all the recruitment stuff that you're going to do and plan that out. Because if you plan that out, when you show up to a recruitment for a new parent, you're able to sit down and say, here's what we're doing. And when you say that, that gives every parent the ability to say they got it together. And people want to join something that feels like it's winning, and people want to join something that feels like it's going to be fun. And if you give them that vision on fun, they're gonna participate. So thank you, everybody. At this point, we're gonna stand around and sit around and linger and just want to help answer questions for anybody that's there. I think I've seen some pop up with the chat, and so I'm going to get out of this and stop sharing. And
So there's a question regarding printing at the office. Does it need to be official recruiting material, or can units bring in their own pack, info sheets, and calendars for printing too?
all right, sorry, I was paying attention to trying to make that stop. So
We print pack calendars and info sheets for units as well. Make copies of those at the offices.
sure, if somebody is trying to figure out how to print out a calendar and they need 50 of those printed out, yeah, we can print that for you.
The other question, will the unique URL apply to troops as well? Yes, it will.
Yes.
Every
Yeah.
every unit in the Montana Council will have a unique URL, montanabsa.org/troop or pack or whatever, and then whatever numbers, because every unit has 4 numbers they go by, and so we know that some shorten it down to 3 numbers, some go by 2 numbers, and so we'll work with you to make sure it's what your preference is, but every unit will have one of those.
And so that's all of our Cub Scout packs, all of our Scouts BSA troops, and all of our venturing crews all have one of those short URLs.
Yes, Julie.
I have a couple of questions. One is that as you were talking about the owning, the one school and one pack, of course, I'm sure you're keeping in mind the communities that have the schools where there is a pre-K through 2nd grade, and then the next school is a 3rd grade through 5th grade. So in that sense, it probably wouldn't apply because they're all going to be in the same pack, correct? I'm just making clear on that.
Yeah, you're right on that. And Julie, part of the philosophy of it too is, look, if you're a Cub Scout pack, and we have a lot of these across the state where a pack is trying to recruit from 4, 5, 6, 7 schools. And the reality is as us parents, like, I can know the principal of my kid's school. I might be able to keep up with the principal for another school, and bless somebody's heart if they're able to keep up with 7 schools and the secretaries in all 7 schools. The reality is that's a lot of work to keep up with that. And so the difficulty is if you want to do well and have a relationship inside a school, then the schools that you have the better relationship with is where you're going to be able to do more marketing and recruiting from. And then you're going to be more effective at pulling kids. And there's a little statistical thing too. If you sit down and say, all right, I'm going to be good at these schools, and you take the school count of students, the total population of number of available youth that you can recruit from, if you take that whole number, then you can sit down and say, all right, if I'm recruiting from 300 kids, what percentage of those kids do you think are going to wind up being able to join Cub Scouts or have an interest in joining Scouts? And so if you're thinking 20% of the kids are going to be willing to join Cub Scouts, well, 20%, when you start talking about 100 kid population, that's only, that's 20 kids, right? But when you start saying it's 200 kids that's 40 kids. But the reality is 20% isn't the number that we're getting across scouting. We're talking about 4% is a good number, you know? And so a lot of our scout units, when we do a recruitment, we sit down and say, all right, let's go to as big a base as we can to recruit from, but then we skip past the relationship part that makes it more effective. And so, you know, like in Julie, your case, you're going to have a relationship with each one of those schools because, you know, that intermediate school is part of your base.
Correct.
So,
Right. Okay. Right. Can I ask another question?
yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you. As we're talking about flyers and going home and the information on them, just remind me, when we send home the flyers, we put on the flyers like what the cost is for joining Scouts, right? So that when parents are coming to the recruitment meeting, they are already know the idea, or they know how much is going to be asked of them.
So it's an interesting philosophy, right? So you've got a situation where you can either tell them the cost or you can not tell them the cost. When you start to think about soccer and baseball and all these other activities the kids participate in, the first time I signed my kid up for soccer, I had no clue what the cost was. The first time I signed him up for Little League baseball, I had no clue what the cost was, and didn't even have a clue that it was 6 games of Little League baseball that I was signing up for, was paying $180 for it, and was also paying for an entire uniform for the fall for just 6 games. I mean, I was $300-400 in for 6 games. And so the reality in some of this on the cost is parents know when they go to anything to sign up their kid, it's going to be a cost. The great thing about scouting is if we're the biggest bargain around, even if we're charging $150, let's say, on average now. And so, because that's a year's worth of scouting, right? So there's a pro and a con to it. We have the ability on the back side of our flyer to start to include some of that information. But when we start talking about a Cub Scout flyer, we've got all the fun pictures that help attract the kid and the parent on the front side. The bottom quarter of the page is left blank so that we can put the date, time, location, and contacts on there. And really, you know, each of the professionals are looking at putting one pack contact and one contact from the scout office on there. And the reason for that is because, well, if the scout office doesn't answer it, then the pack contact gets to it first. If the pack contact doesn't get to it first, then the scout office gets to it first. And the two help each other with the recruitment effort, right? But something I love with those flyers, Julie, that we didn't get to mention earlier, is if you're trying to have, like Blake saying, send the flyer home more than once, and you can't send it but through the school once, but you still can do a Cub Talk, well, take the stack of flyers with you to Cub Talk, put a wristband on every kid as they go in, take that flyer, fold it down to 1/8 of a size, which fits in the average kid's pant pocket. And as you're sitting there doing the Cub Talk and you're walking around talking to kids, hey kids, if you really want to join Cub Scouts, would you like an invitation to come? And you pull out a couple of invitations and you start handing out an invitation. The key to it is it's an invitation, and it's nothing more than a flyer in our term, but the kid feels like they just got a special invite, you know? And so those flyers doubling up again inside the school when you do, you know, the Cub Talk. The dilemma to it is now you're doing a wristband, which takes a few minutes of time, and you're handing out an invitation. And so you got to have a small crowd to help you hand that out. So 2, 3, 4, 5 people sometimes, you know.
So when we have a recruitment then, and we've handed out the flyers, and now we have the nights, and now we've got the parents coming, and they're going to come to the recruitment table, And I like the idea of setting up a couple of computers or something if they want to sign up online, because there are going to be parents that will come that probably won't have their phones or won't be signing up with their phones or whatever. So that's a really good suggestions. But I guess what would your suggestion be when we do have parents come to this and then they want their children to join Scouts, but they're not prepared to pay the cost. So what do we do with these parents? I mean, do we still have them fill out a paper flyer? Do we just take their name and number? Are they like, gosh, I can't pay this much. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So do you have some suggestions on that?
I do. So the online application process can help with this. And then because if you're using the table method / even talk method, the very first thing somebody shows up and does at any recruitment is stop at that first table and they fill out their name and address and all the contact info on the sign-in sheet for the night, right?
Mhm.
And so they fill that out. If somebody doesn't complete an application that night, then you instantly have both phone number and email address. And so you can reach back out. And when you reach back out, you can instantly state, here's the online link to fill out the application. Please go ahead and fill that out. I noticed you didn't fill that out tonight. There's some pros and cons to this on what I'm about to say, but the reality is when you fill out applications online, it's going to ask for a credit card number. And the reality is a lot of parents are much more inclined to join something with a credit card number than they are with a check or cash. And it's a downfall to society and how it exists today. But at the same time frame, there is a huge percentage of parents that will join that night because you offered them the way to sign up and pay through a credit card.
Okay. So that's good. But what about the ones that can't pay? What do we do with that?
Yeah, so your issue, I think, is a little different. It's not necessarily they can't fill out the application, it's that they can't pay, right?
Mhm.
So the council has another stance to help with that. Look, I know and I realize the cost of scouting has increased greatly. It's still far less than majority of our sports that our kids can participate in, especially when you consider it based on a time frame. And so, but scouting, our council has the financial ability to help support a kid joining Scouts. We don't support them in the fullest of amount. We don't write off a check and say, all right, we're going to wipe clean the entire bill. We allow every Scout unit the ability to apply for a scholarship, and then through the scholarship process, we get to deem, what percentage are they going to pay. So the overall goal, though, is to let money not be the barrier. And in most of our Scout units' cases, especially in our packs, we're all fundraising and doing popcorn in the fall, which helps pay for the registration. And then in addition to that, the good thing about the fall is you're paying for a prorated amount, which isn't nearly as much, which means then you're paying a smaller amount. And as I like to say, a lot of times you're getting a taste of scouting for a couple months. And then if you really like it, the fundraiser that you're participating helps pay for your registration for next year. So.
Okay.
Right,
Good suggestions. Thank you.
Pat just hit on what I was going to hit on, that it's $11 a month. Typically a kid that's joining in September, October, November, December is paying, around $50 or so to join. And then they'll have the opportunity to sell popcorn and whatever else if they want to stay in the program. So before we move on, there's a question in the chat. How does electronic application process work for adult applications on a joint night, since adult applications require YPT? Obviously, their application will have to be approved, and it would wait. It would not be processed until they complete the protection training.
Yeah, so the adult would fill out the application online, and as they go to fill out the application online, there's a part in there where it talks about they must now go and do the youth protection training. For the unit, the charter representative and the institutional head both have the ability to approve adult applications. They are the only two inside the unit that can approve an adult application unless one of those two has gone in and selected somebody as a charter representative delegate. And a charter rep delegate can also approve adult apps. And in that process, they can't approve an adult application if the youth protection training hasn't been accomplished yet. And it tells them this person still needs to do that in the application process for the charter rep to see. So is that clear enough on the adult application process? I think that was from Renee yeah.
I do have another question. So if something kicks where it's kind of put in that pending status where it's waiting something else, whether it's an adult application or a youth application, who is notified of that? Where does it go in the pending situation? With the charter organization rep and institutional head or the registrar? Does the DE know? Who knows where something is at in the pending process?
Sure. So when it's a youth or an adult application and it goes to the unit, the key three of the unit, meaning the institutional head, the charter rep, the unit leader, and the committee chair all get notice that somebody has applied to the unit. Now, if it's a committee chair and it's adult application, or if it's a unit leader and it's an adult application, they'll get notice of it, but they can't approve the app. And there's actually a button there, you can click on it and you will go and see the little button at the bottom of approving is actually grayed out to where you can't apply or click on it. So only for the adults is those people that we were talking about earlier, but the key three get notices, and then up the food chain, people start getting notices too. So meaning the key three of a district can get notices, and then the council key three can get notices too, which all kick in at different timelines. But the very first initial notice goes straight to the unit. And if a unit also sets up a key three delegate, or the district sets up a key three delegate, so forth, then those people will also get notices that applications have come in. And anyone from the key three or a key three delegate can approve youth applications for a unit. And then on your settings page in your My Organization in My.Scouting, so the drop-down menu on the left-hand side, click on it, select Organization Manager. When you go into that, the settings page, which you normally land on first, that page is where you can also select, there's a button in there. If you want youth applications to just automatically be accepted by your unit, you can select that button and nobody has to approve the youth applications for the unit. It would just automatically be accepted online. You're welcome, Renee.
Can I make
Any
a
other?
comment on Julie's question from earlier?
Yeah.
So regarding individuals that might not have the finances to pay for scouting, one of the conversations that I've had a number of times, and I've typically found it successful, is for a pack leader to go up and say, the pack can pay for this. Most units, as has been mentioned earlier, have the finances from popcorn sales or other fundraisers to pay for registration. The pack can say, we can pay for this, but we'd appreciate your help in the committee. We'd appreciate your help in planning activities or in organizing our fundraising events or something, and giving them a job to do and saying, we'll pay for this, but we'd like to have your assistance there. That way there's a little bit more investment coming in from the PAC side for paying for it. That's just one of the ways that I've found is helpful in having that conversation.
Thanks, Blake. Something that reminded me of Blake too is the district executives have access to something called the DIN formation worksheet. Really and truly, if you've got to sit down and form a whole new DIN, there's 6 questions that this worksheet basically asks. And the philosophy is you take all the parents, you put them all at a table together at a picnic table or whatever, and you put them all together and you basically ask for one person to help take notes and lead the discussion of going through the questions on this worksheet. And for the most part, it's going to ask, pick date, time, location, where the DIN wants to meet, what pattern and how often they're going to meet. And then it's also going to ask for a certain number of adults. And it lists out 4 different positions for a DIN to help recruit. One's a DIN leader, 2 assistant DIN leaders, and then also somebody to be identified as a member of committee. But the philosophy is you put this worksheet in front of the group of parents, you give them a few instructions on how to fill out the worksheet and say, please don't skip anything on here. And then you tell them, I need you to identify 3 of the 4 positions at minimum to help form this DIN. And as a scout leader, you kind of have that one person in charge leading the discussion. You tell them, I'm not here to really say you're the one that's going to be in charge, but I just need somebody to help fill out the sheet and lead the discussion. And you kind of stand off to the side and listen to the discussion, but you don't interrupt. You let those parents discuss it and help form a DIN. And so this DIN formation worksheet, when you go through it, really helps form a DIN. I find it a lot more successful than Levi or I or any Cub Master committee chair standing in front of the group and trying to help select the person, because it puts the parents in charge of the DIN. And by standing off to the side, you have the ability to jump back in and intervene when they start to get a little dissuaded or need some help or something like that. So, but lots of different things that that we can discuss on different recruitment tools. But any other questions out there? Any other thoughts, comments, guys? Great. Tom, any other questions? Anything that you need, or Hillary, anything? Craig,
Did you
anything?
call me,
Mark,
Pat?
say that again?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hear you say Tom?
Yeah, just wondering if there's anything else that we can help you guys with, any other ideas that you guys may need?
No, I just will let you know that we discussed this at the last roundtable. Carrie Barr gave a really good presentation. We had over half of our PACs there, and it was a good discussion. And we're getting a head start on this in the spring, and I'm encouraged on the way ahead. This presentation was also helpful. There's a few golden nuggets. That's why I asked if we could get a copy of this. So I appreciate getting that.
Yeah, no sweat, Tom. We've actually recorded tonight. And so we'll push this out onto YouTube for people to watch again if they want later. And then in addition to that, every district executive has access to the PowerPoint that we used tonight too. So if a PAC wants
Appreciate
it, go for it.
Yeah. Can you Photoshop images? It's 4 in the morning here now, and I know I don't look my best.
Yeah, we'll make you look good.
All right, thank you.
Good thing is some of us show up real small on the screens like this, right? So. Katrina, anything that you need help with? Any questions? Perfect. Mark, anything? Perfect. All right.
I do have a request.
Go for it.
Hey, everybody, since I'm going to the World Jamboree in August, I am looking for the Montana patch with the skull. If you can ask anybody if they have extra ones, I'll be more than happy to buy them from them, or I'll be more than happy to buy them a beer one of these days. But nonetheless, I'm looking for that blue Montana patch with the skull on it. So when I go to South Korea, I can hand them out. I suppose we should have one with a balloon, but they don't make
Are you talking about the circle ones or the council strip patch?
council strip patch.
Mike, I think we still have some in the Bozeman store. I'll check tomorrow.
Thank you.
Mhm.